Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about the New England Revolution in the Moving Forward series episode, and to say this season has been a disappointment for the Revs is an understatement, because this was supposed to be a team that had MLS Cup kind of aspiration, and even though I know they definitely lost a couple of key pieces in the last offseason, I didn't think that they were going to be as catastrophic as what we saw in terms of this season, where it was just a team that, it was kind of for a while they were stuck in mediocre, and then they just kind of imploded in the last 2 months of the season. Now, overall, they finished with a 10, 12, and 12 record and finished with 42 points. They scored 47 goals while allowing 50 goals last season. So this was a team that last season we saw not only one of the best attacking team in the league, but also one of the best defensive team in the league. And what's also interesting about the 50 goals that they conceded, it could have been a lot more. Like, it absolutely couldn't been a lot more, especially the way that, if Georgi Petrovic didn't become like the new Matt Turner for the New England Revolution, they probably would have given up 60 plus goal. Like, that back line was abysmal in this season, and it took a huge step back in terms of what we saw last season, when the back line was one of the reason why they had such a good record, and not to mention the fact that they of course finished with the most points in MLS history in the regular season, and they have a goal differential of -3. And not only the fact that they did not make it to the playoffs, it wasn't even close. Like, they finished 10th in the Eastern Conference. It's not like they just barely missed it. They missed it by a bit. But in terms of the top goal scorer for this Rev team, Gustavo Bo is still the top goal scorer for 8 goals, followed by Adam Buxa, who of course was sold in the middle of the season. And I definitely know that if he wasn't sold in the middle of the season, he would have definitely been a top goal scorer and would have finished double-digit goal scorer. Then you got Carlos Hill with 7 goals, Tommy McNamara with 4 goals, and Dylan Barrero with 3 goals to round up the top 5. Top assist leader for the Revs, unsurprisingly, Carlos Hill, one of the player that has been ranked as the highest assist for the past couple of season, is right up there once again, although I don't think this season he actually finished as with the most assists compared to what we saw last season. But then we got Brendan Byatt and Duane Jones with 7 assists, and then you got Sebastian Lletget and Tommy McNamara with 5 assists to round up the top 5. So what went right for this Revs team? And again, anytime when I talk about teams that miss out on the playoffs, and especially teams that are not expected to miss out on the playoffs and had a disappointing season, I'm kind of have to be cherry picking a little bit. So in the case of the Revs, at least they could put up a great performance against Pumas in the first leg. Just let's not ignore what happened in the second leg. That first leg game where they played in the CCL and in the snow against Pumas was just absolutely incredible. And that, again, that was one of those games that, I know nowadays beating a Liga MX team is not as impressive as we've seen in the past, because we've seen more MLS teams that have been able to accomplish that, especially at home. But still, to do that, and especially with the way that was probably the toughest test for the Revs, to come out with a 3-0 victory, we were for sure thinking that they will be moving on into the next round. And again, let's not talk about what happened in the second leg, because I know Revs fans probably know what happened in that second leg between Pumas. And then they also lost just once in 12 games after the CCL exit. So as much as, for part of the season, the Revs were in a mediocre run, once they got out of CCL, they were actually on a good run. So the reason why they kind of falter in the end isn't because of the fact that, they were like any other CCL team where they kind of start to falter and never kind of get that second half resurgence going. For the Revs, I kind of feel like it was the case where they dug themselves in a really deep hole because of the CONCACAF Champions League that they were very committed to, but they quickly climbed climb out of that hole, with them just losing once in the last 12 games. And then not to mention cashing in the Adam Buxa transaction worth report $10 million. So they, I think, made about 6 or 5 million off of that profit, because of when they got him from Poland. I think it was like something like $4.5 million. So yeah, definitely a great investment if you're in a Revs perspective. And again, just another example of the Revs, of course, able to make some good transaction move that they have, and able to develop players to a way where they can sell them off to Europe with a net positive. So now what went wrong for this team? And oh boy, there was a lot that gone wrong. So much that gone wrong that I actually didn't have enough room to put all more than three things that went wrong for this team. So the first thing that went wrong for this team is the fact that this team was bang average. And the reason why they were bang average most of the time is just, well, I would say, how do I say this? They were basically like an elevator, dangling up and down on the red line pretty much throughout the season, and it just feels like there was just no consistency that was found in this team. In fact, I think that probably is the best way for me to describe, instead of using the elevator analogy, that they just had no consistency. I mean, every time when they looked like they were going to be above the red line, it looked like things were going to go well for this team, and they were able to push that one into the first gear. They never did. Just keep getting stuck at third gear every time when they looked like they were going to go above the red line, and then they lost a crucial game and now find themselves below the red line. And then ultimately, in the last two months of the season, really for the last 1.5 season, this is when the elevator basically just kind of fell down on them. I mean, 2 wins in the last 10 games pretty much doom any playoff chances. Like, when you go with just 2 wins in the last 10 games to finish the season, and you're in a playoff hunt, yeah, you're not going to go very far, especially with the way that, during that stretch, they also lost a lot of games doing that time, and lose some crucial game that was like playoff 6-pointers for them to get into the playoffs. So yeah, that was definitely a huge blow to their playoff chances. But also, most of the moves that they made in the off season or during the season turns out to be a huge bust. And I'll talk about the Bruce Arena guys in just a bit, of how, yeah, not only the fact that they turns out to be a huge bust, but yeah, that move, those moves of getting Bruce Arena, former guys, definitely backfired in a big time. And that I will also say that the other thing that went wrong for this team, injuries were a big problem. I mean, they definitely suffered some back-breaking injury throughout the season. And also, I think the other thing that went wrong for this team, as I mentioned earlier, is the defense. The defense were underachieving. I mean, Andrew Farrell, who last season was considered one of the best defenders alongside with Henry Kessler, they regressed badly in this season to a rate where, yeah, that back line was basically like a walking traffic cone. And again, if it wasn't for Georgi Petrovic kind of bailed them out time after time, I think that they would have given up more than the 50 goals they conceded this season. Which, speaking of which, moving on to the MVP and relegation list, it's Georgi Petrovic. And, anytime when you basically pick a goalkeeper as your MVP and relegation, I mean, depending on how the situation is, it's not usually a good thing. I mean, I know some will say, well, what about Carlos Hill? Well, Carlos Hill definitely had a decent season, but I think the reason why the Revs were still in the playoff race for so long is because the innovation of Georgi Petrovic. And again, there was a lot of pressure arriving on his shoulder coming into this team, being the replacement for Matt Turner, and knowing the fact that Matt Turner has had a decorative career with New England, and now, of course, become a regular starter and starting in the World Cup for the U.S. men's national team. There was going to be a lot that rests on the shoulder of Petrovic, of can he potentially provide those kind of similar performance. Well, not only the fact that he basically provide those similar performance, but you can even say, maybe some would say, he is maybe even better than what Matt Turner was during his time with the Revs, and in a short time for the Revs, that is Petrovic. And that's saying a lot too, because Matt Turner was just absolutely incredible. But yeah, some of the save that Petrovic has made is just something that is just completely out of the world. And again, when you have your goalkeeper as your MVP, that maybe is not always a good thing. In this case, it is kind of just shows you why the back line for this Revs team was a huge issue. Which that moves on to the disappointment. And again, I could have easily picked a couple of players on the back line. I could have easily gone with Andrew Farrell and single out that. But I'm actually going to go with pretty much all of the Bruce guys signings. So guys like Omar Gonzalez, Sebastian Lletget, and Josie Altidore, all these guys either played for Bruce Arena during his time with the LA Galaxy or in the U.S. men's national team. And coming into the season, we thought all those guys that, while some of them were kind of started to age out a little bit, in the case of Omar Gonzalez, I think TFC fans kind of warned Revs fan about how bad he was in the back line. And then the same goes for Josie Altidore, that's just unable to find that second year. But in the case of Sebastian Lletget, he was still decent during his time with the Galaxy, and I thought this was going to be a great move of him going to the Revs, and that, not only a change of scenery, but he can definitely provide a spark to this team, and always considered to be a player that has been a proven talent in the midfield in MLS. And yeah, that did not happen whatsoever. I mean, he was very underwhelming throughout the season, and again, just all those moves that they made just turns out to be a huge bust, and one of the reasons why this turns out to be a very disappointing season for the Revs. Now, moving forward for New England, obviously, I think the big thing that they might need to look at is they might need another number 9 if Veroni doesn't work out. And I haven't even got to the fact that, they still haven't found a replacement of Adam Buxaw, and that, Veroni was supposed to be the guy, but, I know the verdict is still going to be judged on him later this season. But yeah, so far doing Veroni time with New England, it's been kind of underwhelming. He hasn't really provided anywhere near the level that Buxaw meant to this team. And I also know that they, of course, just got Bobby Wood in the offseason, but Bobby Wood has been very injury prone. As we saw last season, he was done for the remaining of the season, and you don't know if he's going to get back to the quality he was during his time with RSL. So to get a very injury prone kind of number 9 to pair up with another guy that hasn't really shown much of a flash, I think they might need to look in for another DP number 9, because again, they don't have a number 9 on this team. Gustavo Bo is not a number 9, despite the fact that some people say he is, and that, yeah, that's going to be something that they'll be looking in the market, maybe even in the secondary transfer window. And more depth in certain areas. So again, I think the depth is something that is an issue for this Revs team, where, once the injuries start to come, they're just never able to find the depth to be replacing some of those star players. So I think that's another thing that they might be looking in this offseason, or even in the secondary transfer window. Mostly in the secondary transfer window, because that's where you can definitely get some discount in terms of guys that could be used as utility player or depth chart. I mean, I don't know why. I just use kind of very, very Black Friday or Christmas kind of holiday kind of term there. But that's what I'm trying to say with the way that, when you want to find depth pieces, I think it's not just the off season where you can do so. You can definitely do it in the secondary transfer window too. And then the last thing moving forward for this team is that this might be Bruce Arena last hurrah. So I believe his contract actually ends next season, and Bruce Arena has teased the fact that he is pretty close to think about retiring in his coaching career, and that I think this year could be the last hurrah. I mean, this season was maybe supposed to be the one, especially if they win MLS Cup, but I really think that this upcoming season might be the case. And if that is going to be the case, and if they don't win MLS Cup, well, they're probably going to have to look for a new head coach, and also maybe need to rethink how they built this team, because again, the way that they built this team, it's very weirdly built in some way. I mean, there's definitely talent on this team. Obviously, they have a difference maker in Carlos Hill, and anytime we have a difference maker like Carlos Hill, you're definitely going to at least be a playoff kind of contender. But again, it just feels very weirdly built, where there's definitely some parts on this team that I don't think fits well, and there's definitely more question I think I have with this team to be a playoff contender, or even an MLS Cup contender heading into this upcoming season, than what I saw in last year. So yeah, that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see whether or not if New England can bounce back this season after just a very disappointing and underachieving kind of season. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And as always, if you're a Revs fan, what do you think was the highlights and the things that went wrong for this team? And then most importantly, what are some of the players you consider to be MVP in relation to your team, the big disappointment, and then most importantly, moving forward, how is this team going to look heading into this upcoming season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.